Hello viewers, this is Assistant Professor Gursimran from PG Department of Computer Science and IT, Doaba College, Jalandhar. We are going to start a new series on one of the core language of the web pages, that is JavaScript. In this series, we will learn the basics of the JavaScript through the examples. I'll made all the exercise files available for you, and all the related content means the PPTs that will also be uploaded to the website. So let's start the series with the definition of the JavaScript. JavaScript is a scripting language that allows you to control behavior and allows you to implement the complex features on the web pages. From complex features, I mean adding the timer to the slideshow, displaying a specific content on a specific event. You can do all these complex features through the JavaScript. Before getting into the syntax of the JavaScript, let's have a look on the history of the JavaScript. JavaScript was created by Brendan Eich in 1995 for Netscape Navigator 2. Netscape Navigator 2 is a basically a web browser, and the Navigator 2 was the version of the Netscape. Initially, the JavaScript was called LiveScript, but on the release of 1.1 of Netscape, at that time the Java was getting very popular. Netscape and Sun Microsystems, they made an agreement and changed the name of the LiveScript to the JavaScript. Though JavaScript has nothing to do with the Java. I mean, JavaScript is not the subset of the Java. It doesn't have any features of the Java. But because the Java was very popular at that time, the Netscape and the Sun Microsystem, they made an agreement to basically encash that popularity of the JavaScript and named the LiveScript as JavaScript. In 1997, JavaScript was submitted to the ECMA. ECMA is a European Computer Manufacturing Association, that is basically a standardization body, and made it open. Then ECMA standardized the language and renamed JavaScript to the ECMA script. Though ECMA or ECMA is not no very popular name of the JavaScript, still we used to call it as JavaScript. The current version of the ECMA script is version 10 that was released in 2019. But I want to repeat my words again. JavaScript has nothing to do with the Java. It is not related to the Java. It is not the subset of the Java. Now, JavaScript got very popular. It became one of the core languages of the web pages. Now, as you know, web pages are basically written in the HTML. HTML, hypertext markup language, it is basically a markup language for content and structure. For content and structure means how many divs will be there, how many paragraphs will be there, and adding the text to the HTML pages, adding the images to the HTML pages. You can do all these things through the HTML. The CSS is used for the presentation. I mean, how the things looks. This is basically controlled by the CSS, that is cascading style sheet. And JavaScript is a programming language that is used to control the behavior of the web pages. Behavior, I already told you, behavior means adding the timer to the slideshow, displaying a specific kind of content on specific kind of the events that we will discuss in our later sessions. JavaScript is so much flexible, it's very much capable, and it becomes one of the core languages of the web pages. I mean, you cannot think of a web page without the Java. Though web page cannot be created without the use of the HTML, and it cannot be it cannot be presented well without the use of the CSS, and you cannot think of the web page without the JavaScript, because all the behavior of the web pages is basically can be controlled by the JavaScript. This is a matter of a debate also. Some programmers consider JavaScript a full-fledged programming language, and some considered it as a scripting language. If you really have a deep look into the JavaScript, you will come to know that JavaScript is a scripting language, because you cannot create desktop applications in JavaScript like C++ and Java. You can write the desktop applications in C++ and Java, and that can directly interact with your operating system, and through operating system it can interact with the hardware. But in case of JavaScript, you cannot run JavaScript directly. JavaScript is basically run under the web browser. I mean, if you have written some code in JavaScript, obviously you cannot execute that code directly. You can execute that code through the web browser only. It cannot access your local file system. It cannot interact with the hardware. I mean, you cannot directly interact with the USB port or other hardware of the computer system. You cannot access file system, you cannot access the hardware, and you cannot create desktop applications with the JavaScript. So that's why the JavaScript is a scripting language. JavaScript is a client-side language. This concept can be easily understood from the diagrams that you can observe on the screen. Now, on the user side, user has a computer system that is having the web browser installed, and on the other side we have a web server that has the web pages and JavaScript in the web pages. Now, when the client computer will request for the web page to the web server, what the web server will do, it will transfer the entire web page with the code to the user computer. Now, this web page that includes the JavaScript, that basically includes HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The entire code will be transferred from web server to the client computer, and it will be executed on the client computer. So, the JavaScript is a client-side language. It means whenever you will request a resource that contains the JavaScript, the server will transfer the entire code to the computer, to the client computer, and the code will be executed on the client side. So that's why we called JavaScript a client-side language. Now the next question is, what are the requirements for writing the JavaScript code? You simply need a text editor, like in case of HTML. You need a simple text writer. So in this session, we have discussed the definition of the JavaScript. We also discussed a brief history of the JavaScript, how the live script changes to the JavaScript and then changes to the ECMAScript. Then we discussed why JavaScript is called a scripting language. Then we discussed JavaScript is a client-side language. You need a simple text editor to execute the JavaScript. And one more important thing, JavaScript is case sensitive. That's it with the today's session. In next session, we will discuss how to write the JavaScript code in a HTML file. Thank you very much for watching. Stay connected. See you in the next session. Thanks a lot.